Good morning. Fighting a strife and a passion or passion with the side of the Alice and film Presental Padanken. De Drusha hat man, das ist alle bemachschuwe Fahrt nach der Inglück. Soll ich meinen, ich kann nicht reden wegen der Inglück mit Leibi, ich will reden beklau wegen Safety. Und was man darf sagen, wie man darf auslernen Kinder, und wie man darf auslernen Eltern, wie soll zu reden mit Kindern, als es unglaublich safe. Und für Abuse. Ich heiße Yaakov Horowitz, ich weiß nicht, Jiddisch ist nicht mein Sofer, ich scheine es nicht, dass mein Sofer Schnee. Na, man hat mich gebeten, zu reden in Jiddisch für die heimische Eulam. Und wir der klar, für die Amerikaner Eulam zu tun mehr Drusches wegen die Sachen. Aber ich geklärt, ich habe mich zugestellt an ein Appointment morgen mit einem Dentist, der verrechten, ich finde, ich habe Chesmol damit, für 15 Jahre vorher gemacht, angefangen in einer Yeshiva. Yeshiva da hinein, mit einer Yeshiva in Manzig. Ich bin im Naal für die Yeshiva. Das ist schon 14 Jahre. Und ich habe das Programm, das heißt Project Yes. Und mit Rauf in unserer Arbeit ist mit at-risk Kindern, mit Kindern, die sind auf dem Weg oder auf dem Weg zu dem Chalila. Und bei 10 Jahren zurück habe ich begonnen zu schreiben wegen der Issue von Abuse und Molestation. Und ich habe gesagt damals, als es die größte Siebe von Kindergänger auf den Derech. Und ich habe geschrieben damals, von jener Zeit bis jetzt, gerät wegen dem. Und geschrieben als Sache. Und ich habe mich mit dem, als ist das so. Und ich habe gehalten, als ich Drusches wegen dem, es war die Zimmer, in June, habe ich gehalten 5 Drusches in Baltimore, in Muncie, in Flatbush, push it to train parents, auszulernen, wie soll man da reden mit Kindern. Es sei jetzt niestig, es sei push it, es ist nicht so keine complicated Sachen. Aber man darf verstehen die in der solche Weise, dass man nicht bekehrt nicht. Jede Tate, jede Mama darf reden mit den Kindern, und man darf dann bequem mit dem, man darf verstehen die Parche. Und ich bin gewähnt, ich habe Chesmo damit. Als ich mal mit dem Lernen, ein Kind hat das Schale. So, my rule in class, the rule gewähnt also. Tomer fragt a what-if question. A what-if, das darf man dann noch scheren. Na scheren gewähnt als Schulzeit, in mitten scheren, mit tun ich mal aufsitzen, für a what-if. Aber Tom, was ich verstanden, pushe Bescheid, was ich verstanden, was ich gesagt habe, ich habe gebeten, die Kinder sollen aufhalten die Hand und sagen, okay, das ist gewähnt der Rule in meiner Klasse. A what-if Kasche, so versteht sich, Buchern, jeder Mal, ich tue es what if, habe ich gesagt andere Werte, how about, was ab hier kommt ausgelernt in Jiddisch. Aber ich will machen dasselbe Rule du. Und du, wie bald ich rede Jiddisch, musst du mit seiner Sache mehr, was soll nicht verstehen. So, dann versteht nicht, was ich sage. Ich sage, ich dabei sage, das ist ähnliche Sachen. So, Entschuldigung? Darf ich reden in Jiddisch? Jeder versteht Englisch, du? Okay. Yeah, okay, well, tell him to cancel my appointment. Okay, so I'll speak in English, but if somebody doesn't understand, if you don't understand, I'll do a little of both. If you don't understand what I'm saying, if you have any question, please feel free to raise your hand. Let me ask you.
I didn't want to have what if.
What if, yeah.
You really break your teeth.
So what if I break my teeth? I want to ask you an honest question. Before I start, do I have to convince anybody that you need to protect your children against molestation? If anybody needs convincing, raise your hand, please. I really mean it, I'm asking you, is there anyone here who thinks that it's not important to speak to your children, or that we don't have a problem with abuse in our community because we're Haimish Oilam and everybody's safe and there's no problems? Anybody believe that? Okay. I don't know if you... Okay,
Those
good.
people aren't.
Then I'll just go on with my... I'm sorry?
Saying those people aren't here.
Those people aren't here. Oh, you just get this up.
I could say one thing. I was
Yes.
involved in Williamsburg in this issue, and was a meeting, and I didn't look at Fasad Beruf. Fasad Beruf hat zusammengeriefen von den Oidern, von Zahnen und Nahalen, von alle seine Buildings, und gerett wegen der Minion, der alte Fasad Beruf, der Bjödisch noch. In eine von den Nahalen haben gesagt, bei uns in Mäuse, bei uns in Buildingen, die Schlucht haben schon bestimmt Problemisch. He told them to pack his bag and go home without the Shumatz now because you don't know what's flying in your building.
Okay. Look at what I say. I wrote an article called Human Problems. And I wrote 3 articles about abuse in the Shpacha magazine. If you're interested, you can look it up. It's on my website. It's rabbihorowitz.com. Later, I'll send around the paper if you want to sign up for my website. I send emails usually once a week, once every 2 weeks on different things that I write. So I wrote there that the first 2 articles were about just the issue of abuse. And the 3rd article, it's called Human Problems. I said that, look, we all have, every community all over the world has different issues to deal with. These aren't Jewish problems, they're not Heimische problems, they're human problems. They only become Jewish problems and Heimische problems when we deny that they're there. And when we ignore problems, they fester and they multiply. Befrat in the issue of abuse. There's an expression in the abuse world, that there's an expression among therapists, hurt people, hurt people. Hurt people, people who are hurt people. And one of the things that's troubling us, that we're having such a difficult time with, is that there are victims who themselves were abused as children, and they never sorted it out in their own heads. They didn't get it fixed, so to speak. And they're walking around never suffering. And l'chayre, you'd say the last person in the world to abuse anybody would be an abused child. If I remember, I have an interesting part on Pashas Mishputim. So if I remember, I'll tell it to you. I'll share it with you later. But let's get down to Tachlis, especially now that I don't have to think about thinking of Yiddish. I'll be a little more comfortable and get started. So this project, yes, it's a safety initiative, and it's the Karasik, so we call it the Project S Karasik Safety Initiative. Let me get started. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take about 20-25 minutes, and I'm going to talk to you specifically about issues related to speaking to your children about child safety, what you need to do, and what the main issues are in terms of personal safety. And then I'm going to talk to you about parenting things afterwards that have nothing to do with abuse. I'm going to spend about 10-15 minutes talking about general parenting issues. The reason I should really talk about general parenting because it's a prerequisite. One of the most important things that you need to keep your children safe is that they should talk to you regularly. That's what a real and echte and emerson open kesher with your children. That they come home and with the child, it's very, very important that you have this sort of dialogue with your children. And I'm going to give you some practical ways. A lot of people, say, how was your day? They go up to their room, especially you have teenagers, right? They don't talk. They mumble. How was your day? So how do you get them to talk to you, and what are the types of things that you need to do to really have a kesher with your children? But I'll do that later because I want to deal with these issues first. Okay? So the first question is, does it work? So my first question before that was, do we have a problem? So I hope everybody realizes that we have a problem. And this Imglik, we Heschel and I had the first discussion way before this started. He saw some advertisements that we did for the program, and he asked that I should come up here, and we were supposed to do it next week, but the idea was we were supposed to do it anyway. And the fact is this horrible, horrible tragedy. I just wrote an article this week, this past weekend, I released it Wednesday, and I wrote that for parents to only speak to their children about not getting into a car with somebody else, or to be aware of strangers, you're missing the point. That's one little nakuda. That's one nakuda of the overall safety issue. So the question is, does it work? So I want to give you a mushal. I want you to think about this. Imagine that you're sitting out with your family, you're having a picnic here. It's very nice. I see there's very nice grounds here. You go with your mishpucha, you sit outside, you're having whatever, you made a barbecue, you're eating leftovers from Shabbos, whatever it is. And imagine you all have chicken, and you have children in ages, 2 Jahre, 4 Jahre, 6, 8, Kinder ranging in age from 2 bis 12. Now, imagine that I walk over, stell dir vor, ich gehe zum Tisch, und ich nehme sich Essen von jedem einens portion. How old does your child have to be? Is the 4-year-old going to notice? 6-year-old? 8-year-old? I would tell you probably after age 3, maybe even earlier, a child will say, hey, it's mine. What are you doing? You want to try a different try taking a snack away from one of these children. Okay, go. It's snack time, the kids go to whatever, the concession, the canteen, they come with a lollipop. Try taking away a lollipop from a child. I'm not suggesting that you do with each other's kids. Try your own first. The first thing they're going to tell you is, hey, it's mine. What's this to do? Oh, it's mine. They might say it, they might react like that, they might give you a look. However they express that to you, the clear message is, this is mine, it belongs to me, please, sei mir gesinnt. I propose to you, Rabbi say, if you can train your children to think about their own bodies like they do a lollipop of theirs, something that belongs to me, it doesn't belong to you, and you're not allowed to take anything that's private from me. That's really it. It's so simple, Rabbi say. That's it. It's as simple and as complicated as that. We need to train our children that their bodies and their personal space is completely tzniistic. It isn't a mashu of any of these discussions that the most heimish person should feel uncomfortable having with the kinderweg names. Mamish push the Sachen, and it's a zayir idol. You just have to get them to think like this. You have to get them to think that I have a space around me, and this gehört zu mir. Jeder versteht that mein Enkel gehört zu mir. If somebody came over and just ripped my jacket off my shoulder, everybody would say, any child would say, hey, this is ants. That's how you have to get your children to think. So, let me talk to you about the basic messages that are important for parents to tell the children. I'm going to go through them quickly, and then I'm going to go a little bit theistic. And please, if you have any questions, as I said before, if you have a what if, when I'm finished, if you have a question, don't understand something that I'm saying, please speak up now. So the basic messages are, number one, keine tunish zugen asad for a kind, as also zugen for the eltern. Nobody's allowed to tell a child a secret that they shouldn't tell their parents. You train your children. If somebody tells you, nicht zu zugen for the mama, tate mama, we soll zugen for mir, nichel de geben mama tunda for them. Okay, that's message number one. To train your children. There is no hechetimtze in this Welt that anybody should tell your children not to tell you something. When I'm an alpha in a yeshiva, it's extraordinarily inappropriate. It's nicht du kein Schimpfsieg in der Welt, also jetzt ist es für Talmud meine, there's no such thing. Man darf ausleihen die Kinder, man soll and that's number one. Number two is about the personal space. The children sollen sein bequem with the notion, with the concept, as their body, their space gehört zu sein, and there's some ways to train them to do this. Another thing is, you're not supposed to, children have a right to speak up if they're not comfortable. If a child is made uncomfortable by an adult, they have a schist, they have a right to say, no, stop doing this, I don't like this. Number four is good touch, bad touch, we call it. Good touch, bad touch, meaning some touching is okay, and some touching is not okay. And there's a very tsanua way to say this and explain it to children. Those are basically the four things. Nothing is foolproof. Nothing is foolproof. But I could almost I could almost guarantee you that children who are trained, like I can guarantee you that children who are trained and understand this are far less likely to be molested, because it's not foolproof. It's like a car alarm. A car alarm, if you have a car alarm in your car, it's not foolproof. Somebody can steal your car, but they're not going to go to a car that has a blinking red light. So do under the cars. It's not foolproof, but if there's an alarm there and it works, nobody's going to start up with it. You can see, I can certainly see, put me in a room with children, I can tell you, watching them for 5-10 minutes, you can see which children have the self-confidence to protect themselves when somebody starts up with them. So it's not foolproof, but it really, really does work. So let me go through them. Number one, don't tell your parents. It's simple. Just tell it to your children. You know, one of the things we have a hard time with, the Kinder folgen ist nicht das Sache, right? There's so many things we tell them, but they don't listen to us. So, man macht da ein bisschen Kabachoymer. Wenn ich stehe dort, befolgt man nicht. Wer sagt man befolgen? Ein Jahr später, als ich bin dort. But it's not true. The children really do. Das ist eine Masse, was passiert in meiner Yeshiva. Fast wie es. Ich habe gehabt, ich schmiss mit den Eltern in meiner Yeshiva 10 oder 11 Jahre zurück. I found out that I didn't know who it was, or I would have gone to the police. I found out from, because of my project guest, I have a day job and a night job. My day job is a lot of fun. I get to walk in yeshiva, listen to children learn. The night job is not that much fun. So, because of my night job, I found out that there was somebody in town that was molesting kids. I didn't know who it was. And I got very nervous. It was like right before the summer. So I called an emergency meeting with my parents, and I said, everybody has to come. Every father, every mother. I made a sign-in sheet at the door. I said, whoever doesn't sign in, I'm going to call you tomorrow and ask you why you weren't there. I want every single person. Almost everybody came. And I spoke to them like this. And one of the first things I started with is tell children to tell your parents, if somebody tells you not to tell your parents, tell them. Forgot about it, went on. A full year later, a Jahr später, Schwierzeit, eine von den Morris bei uns in Lamidachal hat gemacht a project mit den Kindern. She made the Kinder soll machen Blumen for the mamas. So they colored. One day, the first day, they cut it out and they pasted it and it was supposed to dry. And then the next day, the last day before Shviz, they were going to paint it and take it home. So the teacher on the way out told the kids, it's a surprise. Okay? Now, in medical terms, we call this a false positive. It's called, in medical terms, it's called a false positive. Someone goes for a heart exam or whatever, and they see something, and there was something there, but it wasn't that. But it's called a false positive. This was a false positive. There was nothing wrong. The teacher didn't do anything inappropriate. But the children, the children were dismissed at 4:15. They get dismissed at 4:15. 2 minutes later, my cell phone started to ring off the hook. For the next hour, I got one phone call after another. The parents, they weren't upset. The parents knew what happened. They didn't think there was anything wrong. They were nishtoimim that the children remembered. Because we told them they were going to get a gift. Every kid came home and said, Mama, the Mama hat gesagt, ich tue dir nicht sagen, come on, hand it over. So, it was a false positive, but it works. You can train children to get safety messages and they listen to it. This issue, never, dem tired Kind Leiby. It's one of the things you tell children, don't go. And Mr. Masa, this school year, the beginning of the school year, 10 months ago, a talmid of mine, who was 5 years old, he goes on the bus every morning. There's a bus from the district. It's not a yeshiva bus. We don't have buses. The school district has it, so they're not our people. So the school bus pulls up, and the Yiddish mensch was driving it. None of them are Heimshingalad. None of them are. So the bus driver pulls up, and it was a substitute bus driver. And Mr. Master, 5-year-old kid, he looks up, he says, "Hey, who are you?" He asks the driver, "Who are you?" And the driver says, "Oh, I'm Jimmy. I'm the regular driver's not here today. Come on the bus." You know, Grada and Muncie, when they open the bus doors, the traffic does stop. I know if you live in the city, it's hard to imagine this. But, you know, traffic does stop on both sides of the road. So, you know, if people start honking, and, you know, people are, you get on the bus. Come on. And the kid wouldn't move. He went back to his mother. He says, "Mommy, I don't know who that is. I'm not going on the bus." If we would have been training our children, it really does work. Let me talk to you about personal space. Research shows that if you teach your children as simple a message as "this drawer belongs to you," or "this box, you have a box in your room," children as young as 3 and 4 years old, if you give them a thing for their toys, and you tell them that other children have to ask permission to go in there, Lamushal, the research shows that even something as simple as that is extraordinarily helpful in helping children stay safe. Because when the children see this, when something comes up and they get used to the idea from kind fasun that there are certain things belong to me. So I encourage you at home to try to get your children from a very young age used to this idea. This drawer, this box, this thing. It's extremely, extremely helpful. People can... I'm sorry? You teach children this. So you say certain things are for everybody. Certain things are for everybody. You could share. Thank you. But then he make a decision. Right, you tell them you should share. Thank you. That's not a one-inch cut. You can tell your children it's good that you should share these things. If your brother or sister asks you, you should share. It's very nice to share. But you have a right to say, "I don't want to share it." Yes?
Probably statistically, most of these cases happen by people who they don't trust.
I'm going to say that's my next speech. Yep, that's the next point. That's excellent. Very scientific. As most molesters are people that the children know. I'm going to get to that next. So training them about not making them. The next thing is to train them that nobody has the right to make them feel uncomfortable. And most of the research shows is that when children, a lot of victims, later on, they say, you know, you see, it's very hard because we train them as to be underferetzig. It's a bissel von a stira. It's a little bit, it's not a stira, but it's a shvil azov. You need to find the balance between teaching your children to be derecheritzig and respectful and always, but to say, if they feel uncomfortable, to say, "Stop. I'm sorry. I can't talk das chis." To sagen, das macht keinen bequem head off. And they can say it politely, but they should get them into the notion, the idea that they're allowed to do this. I mentioned that, you know, there was a Supreme Court justice in the United States, a chief judge of the Supreme Court, and his name was Oliver Wendell Holmes. Er hat einmal gesagt, als ein guter Judge und ein guter Lawyer darf trachten wie ein Ganer. Okay? Because that Menschen kommen bevor sie was eine Ganovum, but darf trachten, wie tracht als man ein Idol in der Schumme, was lernt Schmier Solution und auf Zeit, ein ganzer Tag, und das tun, dass man nicht kann geht bescheifen. Jeder kommt vor euch, also die bist der Zadig, sei geheim Gesundheit. A judge darf trachten einmal wie ein Ganer. Let me ask you differently. If you want to put a burglar alarm in your house, you're building a new house, and you want to put a burglar alarm, who's the best person to teach you what you should do to make the house safe? The guy. You call the guy and say, "If you were going to my house, how would you get in?" He says, "I love these bushes in front. You have these 3 bushes, that's fantastic. I can hide, then I have an hour, I can play around with the window." So you cut the bush down. You know, you think of what predators do. They try to invade the children's space. They try to get the children not to tell their parents. They start off with things that are not abusive and move their way in. So these are the simple messages that you need to give your children in order to keep them safe. And, you know, what I wrote in this piece this week, it's called Our 9/11. If you're interested, You want to send the papers around, please? If you want to, just give a few to the ladies. If anybody wants to, Rabbi, say I have an email list. If you're interested, you can just put your name and the city you live and the email address, and I'll have my secretary add you to the list if you'd like. Okay, and also if you have any questions, if you're not comfortable, if you can send a few to the women, please. If you're not comfortable raising your hand and asking the question, feel free to write on one of the cards that are Pesha prepared and send them up. Okay, and the final thing is good touching, bad touching. And the basic message as I said before, is good touching. I can touch you, Shalom Aleichem, good. And bad touching is when people touch you and it's not okay. Now, one of the most simplest and sneeistic ways to say it to boys and to girls is you tell them that anything that's covered by a bathing suit, nobody's allowed to touch you there. It's very, very simple, it's very sneeistic, and it's very effective. Real simple. Anything covered by a bathing suit, nobody's allowed to touch you in a spot that's covered by a bathing suit. And it's extremely important. Because don't say only people who know you, or only mishpucha mention. I know you don't believe me. I don't blame you. I know it's hard to process that this Haimisha mention and this mishpucha members, most abuse us from family members. The kids down the block, kids in the next. I don't want to make everybody crazy, but it is what it is. It is what it is, Rabbi say. It's the biggest sakuna your children have by ruchnius and gashmius, 10 times more than anything else. I'm telling you, look, I wrote this before all the arrests. 10 years ago, I wrote it. It's the biggest reason. I have biggest reason kids go off the derech. I cannot remember a hard drug user who wasn't abused. I cannot remember, in all my years of dealing with kids, I'm not talking about a kid who smokes marijuana. I'm about a kid who's using hard drugs or attempted suicide. Every one of these kids were molested. I wouldn't say everyone, 95%. I know you don't listen to Uncle Yankee. Trust me on this one. And lie to look at the arrests. Look how many people are in the system. The average molester in the secular world, the average I'm the Yehidi. What access do they have to children? Think of what we have access to kids as opposed to in the non-Yiddish world. The average secular molester molests 52 kids in his lifetime. There's nothing more important than this. You got to speak to your kids about this. There's nothing else. This is it. I'm not nothing else. If you, in order of importance, your job as a parent, 1 through 8, is making sure they're safe. Everything else is important, but it starts at 9. You got to do this, Rabbi say. I know, there's a thing in English called cognitive dissonance. It's called cognitive dissonance. If you want to, again, if I remember, maybe I'll email someone. I'm sorry. On the homepage of my website, I moved the articles that are listed by when they were published. The articles on abuse, I had my assistant move it to the top. So if you go to my website, it's rabbihorowitz.com, there's about 5-6 articles on abuse there. So I really would encourage you to look at some of them. There's a thing called cognitive dissonance. Cognition means seichel. Dissonance means pastira. So there's a real thing. You read the definition, cognitive dissonance. You look it up. You can write it down if you'd like to. Excuse me. That means if the moyach is makabel epis, or hears something, you hear something, was macht dich in bakfein. It's a steer to what you're doing. So you say, it can't be. Somebody's smoking. It doesn't, hey, it's not healthy. People die of lung cancer. Yeah, whatever. I have a 98-year-old guy. He's 90 guy smoking till he's 98. Yeah, the vice versa. Really, in his mind, he knows that it's true. No, but when there's a steer, you really read the definition. This is exactly what it is. So, eine Shomer Torah mitzvahs in the Zmachmer of Chweis was das ist eine heimische Sache. You find out somebody was arrested or somebody, somebody. You have to get over this. You really have to get over this in your heads. So the good touching, bad touching is simply to teach each other. But when you speak to them, Mamalusha, the only one who's allowed to touch you in a spot covered by a bathing suit is Tata in the mama when we're bathing you, and a doctor while he's examining you, and Mami or Tati are in the room. That's it. Nobody else. If you I'm allowed to kinder by the Bubba Zaida, then you should say Babi and Zaidi when Tati Mami go away, then Babi and Zaidi can. Be befeirish. Medavs zogen befeirish. There's nothing else works. You got to tell them to say, unless you wind up sending them to a shvuga or somebody else, then tell them they're going to bathe you, so then they're allowed to, but nothing else. Okay, let me just review them very quickly. Don't tell children they should be trained that no one's allowed to tell them not to tell their parents. Talk to them about the personal space. Nobody's allowed to make you feel uncomfortable. Good touching, bad touching. That's it. What breaks my heart, I can't begin to tell you the tsar when I hear, and I just mean this lady, when I hear that children were molested, it's so simple. It's so easy. Look at this. It's so simple. These are just, it works. It's mamish works. Please, I beg you, Rabbi Say. There was here in the Emerson we were driving. I did a talk like this. I did a teleconference like this last June. I did a few teleconferences where people called in. And there were about, 500, 1,000 people on the call. And in the month of August, I get a phone call from a woman. I was driving, I didn't have my Bluetooth, so my Rebbetzin picked up the phone. And she says, it's Horowitz, I don't actually got my cell phone number, whatever. So, it's a chazoitze weint. My wife started crying. She called to thank me for saving her son's life. Here in the Catskills, there was a summer camp, and there was a substitute Rebbe for the day, and her son, she spoke to the son before the camp, the simple Sachen, just the stuff, that's it, nothing. She sent him off to camp, and he and a friend were approached by this person. Her son knew exactly what was going on. He started screaming at the top of his lungs. He ran to the office. He says, call my mother, screaming, call my mother. I'm sorry, we don't make calls now. Every second Friday, you call my mother, somebody touched me, somebody call my mother. And they called right away. And his friend was sodomized by the guy. It's that simple. I'm begging you, Rabbi Say. I'm telling you, I know you find it hard to believe it. I know part of you doesn't believe it. I'm begging you, Rabbi Say. I'm begging you. Please take it seriously and see that you speak to your children. If you're Zayda, like if a Kinder sollen so freie Kinder, and the Kindskinder, the only thing that's going to stop this is education. And when every child knows this, it's going to stop. That's when it's going to stop. Nothing else is going to stop it. Education is the key. Let me one final thing on this, and then I'm going to go to some of the parenting things. I'm going to do it quickly because I'm a little late. The research shows that if you get very nervous when you speak to your children don't listen to you. They hear what you're saying, but they freeze. The research shows, if you think of it like 1 to 10, okay, 0 to 10. 0 is not nervous at all. Hi, let me tell you, nobody's allowed to tell you, that's 0. And 10 is, you have to listen to me. So if you're up there, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, the kids get so bugged out, we say in English, they're so nervous, that they don't listen to you. The research shows that if I'm an adult tells you something like this, your brain thinks like that siren. I didn't plan this. Your brain freezes. Oh, I'm in an emergency. What's going on? And they can't listen to you. So you're supposed to be a little bit anxious. 2, 3, 4. That's the range. It's important enough that you also tell them they shouldn't chew with their mouth open, or don't, whatever it is. So it's important, but you be calm when you tell this to your children. Explain to them that it's important, but be calm. With the help, with the Rebbeinu Shalom's help, where I've been working on this for 18 months. We're producing, I hope it'll be published within a few weeks. I've been working on something for parents, a tool for parents, so that you should be able to speak to your kids. It's like a book it's like a storybook for kids, that you can read all these messages to your children, relaxed on the couch. It like sort of gives you a guidebook. You'll sign up for the thing if you want. It should be pretty well advertised. Yeah, I hope it'll be published in Mitzvah before the start of the school year. Okay, let me talk to you about general parenting, and then I'll take any questions. What age should one speak to the children? That's not a what if. Thank you. You should start speaking to your children about these things at Zicha by 3 years old. For sure. Thank you for asking the question. For sure by 3 years old. Some of these things are very simple, and even little children can understand. Kifi erkam, of course. But once they're able to start communicating, it's important to start getting these messages across to them. Any questions like that not what ifs, that just clarification questions, I'll gladly take them now if you wish. Ladies, if anybody wants to write something and send it, I'll be glad to take it.
A little bit good touch, bad touch.
Yeah, okay.
I don't understand.
You don't understand? Thank you for asking. How do you give it over? You explain to them that you see, it's important to say that you don't say anybody who touches you is nobody's allowed to touch you. So you explain to them most touching is okay between people, but there's good touching and there's some touching that's not good. It's not appropriate. Use whatever word you want to use. It's not a proper way for people to touch you. And one way to explain this is that if this place is covered by a bathing suit, let's say Lamush, let's say the guy's in the pool, or you're outside the pool, or you're in your bungalow, or you're out in the playground, keine Turach a Platz, the bathing suit. That's it. And you'll get false positives, like I said before. There'll be, someone will push something. That's what Michael's on. Someone's going to push. They're just pushing around. Nothing wrong. But you don't say, "Yeah, I didn't mean that." You don't say. They say, "Who did it?" I'll talk to him. You're not supposed to just like machasavek. Did I answer your question? Okay. Anybody else in terms of clarification? Oh, it's the camera. Anybody else have a question in terms of clarification? One thing that's important. All right, I'll get to it a little later. Let me talk to you about parenting stuff. It's extremely important. If I say all of this, basically everything we're talking about is predicated on medachov makesher with the kinder, because they're not going to talk to you if you don't have the kesher with them. It's very unlikely that they're going to have these types of discussions with you. Please. Kinder, absolutely, sure. The Medafsa Oslan has andere Kinder to of course. Sure, a lot of times what happens is as a kind werd molested, a lot of times they act it out. They don't understand it, especially younger Kinder. Sie verstehen nicht. Das verstehen nicht, was passiert zu sein, aber sie wissen, man sieht, macht es auf andere. I'll tell you that heute. There's a kid in Pashas Mishputim. He weiß, dass Ruf geht daheim mit der Teure nicht ausgesucht und nicht geht für einen Morgen. Und Pashas Mishputim, steht zweimal zu sagen, man soll handeln ehrlich mit der Geld. Behaften mit der Geld. Zweimal. Der erste Mal steht, behaften mit der Geld im Yisem Beretz Mitzrayim. Der Geld ist so, wie Leute sich erzählen, die Geld im Yisem Beretz Mitzrayim, sondern Scheppen der Geld ist nicht Geld. Nachdem steht, bei Shishi, später im Parasha steht, wir sollen uns Scheppen der Geld, der Atem mit Atem ist nefesh der Geld, die Geld im Yisem Beretz Mitzrayim. Der zweite Mal steht mit einer Sinnes Tam. So, Koidekol, ich habe kein Mensch verstanden, Rashi's Pshat. Rashi versteht von allem, Rashi sagt, nimm schon Woche, Teumel Achavlich, ja? Mit Schepetem können wir sagen, die ist doch ein Gewinn Geld. Man sagt, das wäre für die Kinder, man sagt, die Kinder schlagen nicht der andere Kind. Was ist das? Schlagen mehr. Man sagt, es ist nicht richtig. Nimm schon Woche, Teumel Achavlich. Man redet nicht, es ist ein es ist ein spätere, it's the second or third thing you tell your children, not the first thing. Auch beklagt, was darf man zweimal dieselbe Sache. Und der Sinnes Tam wird gedacht sein bei der ersten Mal. Gewöhnlich, aber als Maßberät, dass der erste Mal sucht der Sinnes Tam, der zweite Mal zu geben Starkheit, man sucht das der zweite Mal, aber was darf man der Sinnes Tam? Lille de Mustafina, ich habe gehabt, ich habe geschrieben eine Cipher, die Return of the Parasha for Teenagers. Meeste Sachen, was ich schreibe, das Sachen, was passiert in der Woche, ist, ich habe gehabt, eine sehr schwere Abuse Case, 4-5 Jahre zurück, Parashas Mishputim. Es ist mir angefallen, dass Efschen, Ich habe gesagt früher, hurt people. Ja, Menschen, die sind gechappt, abused Menschen sind more likely to sein abusers. Well, das ist eine Sache. As the mitzvah that's abused, the last thing in the world you think is that he'll abuse somebody else. Aber man sagt doch, and you see this every place. You go on a school bus, 8th graders have the best seats, right? They push all the other kids away. So what do the other kids say? When I'll be an 8th grader, I'm going to be nice. Everybody can sit wherever they want. You see the Marines. Somebody comes into the army, the old people, the new guys, they make them do push-ups. And the other people take the rookies, and nachdem, jeder Mensch was gewähnt, every person that was bothered by somebody, I'm sure he said to himself, I'm never going to do this again. And a year later, they're doing it to the next one. So there's something, hurt people, there's something there that when you get gechappet, it's just human nature. Maybe you don't understand it. Little the Mustafin, the Eshe came and Zugnes, this was the Torah Zugnes, the Eshe Mul, the Torah Zug, the Haftamis again, is a Mazalzal. Gael, a sign of the Lois of Hatzenim, Mizon Shepen Agay, in the Chavmoida, that ihr werdet das Team, weil ihr sind allein gewesen, Geirem in Mitzrayim. But the nation, in der Volk hat man gechappet, is, Efsher, ich sage, Ties nicht, weil you're susceptible, es ist ganz Yechoil, es ist kein Sein, that you'll be more likely to abuse other. When a Ger comes around, you'll be nasty to him because Mitzrayim was nasty too. The Zweite Mal steht. Wegen dem, they've seen his time. The Zweite Mal steht. Die verstehst. Das ist ein anderer. Anyway. Okay, I got that out of my system. Thank you. Let me talk to you about parenting. Please get in the habit of asking your children to share the day with you. Child comes home, please get in the habit of saying, how was your day? And if you're working, and if you're working, you're working, you're busy, you're coming, find 3 minutes a day. 3 minutes, that's all it takes. 3 minutes. How was your day? It's so important, and I'm begging you, Rabbi, say, please turn off your cell phones. 3 minutes, 5 minutes, you come home, please turn off your cell phones. Please, a few minutes a day. Second Shabbos, if somebody has an arm, people who have amputated limbs, they say it's cool, but they feel like they think their hand is there still, So then, people are missing their cell phones. Like on Shabbos, like the guys are walking around, like, you get this false, turn it off for a few minutes a day. Please, it's so important to your children. I'm spending the day with our daughter today. Our daughter's sitting in the parking lot. We're spending the rest of the day together. So we do, she's our baby and our youngest, and we do a few days like this a year. So I wrote in the article, if you're interested, it's called Time Not Money. It's on my website. It's called Time Not Money, about spending time with your kids. I wrote there, Emma Samasa. When she was 10 years old, I asked her, what do you want to do today? Anything you want, I'm with you. So the night before, we go shopping. That's part of the experience. Take them shopping, and buy with Nash, whatever you want. So I told her, I said, Sarah, we're going out tomorrow. What would you like? What can I buy for you? I meant Nash. So she was 10 years old. She says, Tati, could you buy me? I want a cell phone battery. She didn't have a cell phone. She was 10 years old. She wanted my cell phone battery. She says, Tati, I want you. Can I have your cell phone battery? So I said, what do you mean? She says, when we leave the house, I want to take your battery, and I'll give it back to you at the end of the day. So, to do it all day, I'm not going to tell you something that's not realistic. A couple of minutes a day. Another suggestion I really have is try to ask a question that only you could know as a parent. Thank God for Blackberries. If you want to send somebody a text message on a Blackberry or a lot of other phones are like this. When you go to text messaging, you see the whole thread, right? You see all the conversations you had with that person by text messaging for the last year or two, right? Try to do this with your kids. When you have a conversation with them, try to carry on the conversation from what you were talking about before. It's the nicest compliment in the world. And I'm telling you now, if your children are not talking to you, if you're having a hard time, especially if you have a teenager, and you're asking questions like, how was your day? How was lunch? How was the bus ride home? You don't deserve a better answer than okay. a question that's generic, a question that I could ask. That Heschel could go over to any of your kids and say, how was your day? How was your bus ride? How was your thing? It's not personal. It's a general question. You know, when you say, how are you doing, you really don't want the other person to answer. You think about it. You know, they say in America, in English, they say, someone who doesn't have, what's the definition of somebody who doesn't have a life? What's the definition of somebody who doesn't have a life? You ask him how he's doing and he tells you. You know, right? You know, you don't really want an answer. You say, how you doing? And it's like, I've seen Rav Heschel. Hey, Rav Heschel was machmas. Alison, how you doing, Rav Heschel? I actually have a hangnail on one of my toes. It's bothering me. I'm like, you know, my back is bothering me. Try this with somebody. Next time somebody tells you, how you doing, answer them. Tell them what's going on in your life. I guarantee within 2 seconds they're going to start checking their emails or walk away from it. I'm sorry, you got to go. You know, they don't want to hear an answer. So when you go to your kids and you say, Shefala, how was your day? Fine. You don't deserve better. It's gut nicht besser. If you ask them, how was the Bechina? Or your child tells you, yes, they're at day camp, they could, whatever. Last week they couldn't get into the pool because whatever. And you ask them, were you able to swim today? How did it work? Somebody splashed me in the pool. No, did you? Did it? Finish the conversation. Finish the conversation. Just keep a thread. Years ago, I was more brave. I was younger. My teeth were stronger. I did 3 workshops in Yiddish in a Chassidish community. They asked me to come. It was about 10, 11 years ago. So, it was 3 Monday nights. So the first night, I spoke to them about relationships with your children. I didn't know about abuse then. I was much more relaxed. I just spoke. My anxiety level was 0. I walked in and talked about relationships with kids. So I told them, this basically, you know, spend time with your kids, isn't it? So whenever I speak to the same oilam a second time, I always call the person who's misadir and I say, "No, this is the guy from the oilam, you know. I have to have feedback." So I called up the guy Sunday morning, and I said, "Later, Pasha, what's the geschmiest bis medisch?" So he said, a lot of the Ingalat came to him and he said, "If I should Rabbi Horowitz, I shot the 2 Kinder, you know, 2.2 kids and a cat, you know, er hat gesagt, sie reden alle seine Kinder, für kleine Nachkinder, it was in Muncie. Ich gehe dann in Stutt, ich komme heim, I mess mit how are you, and how are you, and how are you? So, the rule is, if you speak to a person and they don't and they think you don't understand them, right? Because the guys are like, oh yeah, whatever. You know, they know you don't understand them. The Sifrei Misa, they call it Nikitas HaBechira. It's a verstehen, wie ein Mensch halten sein. Okay? So, I said to myself, the second speech and the third speech is a waste of time if I don't address this issue, because they think I don't understand their lives. So I better figure out how to address this. It was in Spain. So I went to, but when I started the speech the next time, I asked for volunteers. I said, I'd like 3 people to volunteer. I'd like to ask you some questions. I'd say, yeah, a few guys raised their hands. So I asked the first one, I said, tell me, who's the busiest person in the square? The Rebbe, right? So he says, the Rebbe. So I said, let me tell you, when was the last time you went to the Rebbe? Tell me, here are the questions. I'm going to ask all 3 of you. When was the last time you went to the Rebbe? How long did you spend with him? And how did you feel when you left? So he tells me, he says, when was the last time? Whatever, 5, 6 weeks ago. How long were you there? 4 minutes. You know, you get a little... So he was there for just a few minutes. How did you feel? Fantastic. So I said, why did you feel good? Set aside Ruchnias, you know, just put all that aside. Tell me what made you feel good about it. So he says, so he was very articulate, it was very interesting. He says, the Rebbe, he continued the conversation. I walked into him, ich weiß, the Rebbe is busy, and ich red mit ihm, alles ist gestorben. The Rebbe gives me his full attention, and while I'm there, there's nothing else. The Rebbe doesn't make phone calls. I know he's busy. Ich weiß, ich kann sagen, he gives me his full attention. And I walk in, he always picks up the conversation. He says, how does he do this? So I said, if the Rebbe could do it with you, you could do this with your children. Even if you come home late at night, and even if you have 3 minutes with them. Really, Rabbi say, I really encourage you to do this. And just and teach your children. It's also very important to teach your children that they can discuss anything they want with you. It's very important to tell this befedish to your children. A lot of the issues with abuse, it's very uncomfortable to speak to parents about this. So, and a lot of times the molesters make the children feel like they're doing something wrong. Excuse me. So it's very important to befedish. Tell your children if there's anything, you can talk to me about anything you want. Okay. So I'm going to take some questions if you have any. I want to give you a bracha for Siyata D'Shmaya and Nachas from your own children. And I really beg you, Rabbi Say, I beg you, please take this seriously. And I'm not telling you something that's, years related. It's very easy to do. It's beficha bilvavcha lasaisa. It's very, very easy to do. It so happens I have on my website, there's a video clip of a talk that I gave like this in English, where I didn't even pretend to speak Yiddish. If you have it, forward it to your friends and beg them. You should know something, Rabbi Say. If you have 12 families here next to each other, if 6 of you do it and 6 of you don't, you're still vulnerable. You're still not protected until every child knows this. I'm telling you, Rabbi Say, it's the only way it's going to work. And I'm going to say something a little bit controversial. I really would ask you, please, to try to raise your children without patching them. Well, listen to me. Listen to Uncle Yankee. Listen to me. A lot of these things that I told you are very hard to train your children if you're patching them. Because you're... I'm sorry? I'm not talking about this. I said controversial. You can disagree with me. It's okay. You're welcome to disagree with me. I'm not talking about don't cross the road. I'm talking about hitting to hurt or humiliate. A lot of these things, it's very, very hard to... I've told you, you disagree with me, it's okay. You can disagree with me. I live where I live, and I see what I see. I have an achrayas to say things as I see them. If you're hitting your children, it is very hard to explain to them that nobody's allowed to make you feel uncomfortable, and nobody's allowed to invade your space. You're doing it. There's ways to raise idle erlich children without it. I felt an achrayas to say it. I'll give you time to disagree with me. Listen, Rabbi Say, it's possible to do without it. Bishrat, because it's such a sakuna today, I think it's something that you should think about as parents. Any questions, please? Yes?
The first rule of thumb used to be don't talk to strangers. I realize you're not addressing that at all.
I did not, thank you. That is correct. No, you should...
I have a second question
Please.
I'd like to answer. Is there an age where it's too old to speak to your child already? And it's older teenager.
Thank you very much. Okay, so the first question was about not speaking to strangers. It so happens I did not address this because most people tell this to their kids already. I assume that most parents are having these conversations. But yes, you definitely should tell your children, not to take things from strangers, or not to. There's no reason that adults should be giving gifts to children or things like that. It's a perfectly reasonable thing to tell your children. And as far as the age level, it's very appropriate to have a discussion like this with a bucher of 15 or 18. You don't have to, obviously it's a different discussion. You don't have the bathing suit talk with them, but you do speak about tznius and eitelkeit, and absolutely. And you say that some people, if a person, whatever, it is what it is. Yeah, I definitely would encourage you to have the conversation with the children. And parents have to be vigilant. I was sicher dabei sein, please, ich kann haben meine Wissel, ich wasn't the Kindergarten in Mikvah, und Tate mit sein. Das sind, kleine Kinder, make sure you have to watch your children. Stuff happens when there's chaos. If there's no shmira, your children need shmira. And it might need, it might mean that you have to change your life. And you take turns going to sleep if you have young children Shabbos afternoon with your Rebbetzin. Children need shmira. It's a very different world. Probably it's always been like this. But I'm telling you now, it is what it is. I'm repeating myself. Yes?
I want to follow up on this question. You say, not talking to strangers.
What's the gate of a stranger?
No, I mean talking. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so you express it in a way that not saying Shalom Aleichem. If somebody comes and says hello to you, that's fine, but you should not be engaging in conversations and more than one hello, more than one hi, how are you? You know, by the way, there's going to be overreactions. I'm telling you, people are very nervous, and people are going to overreact, and it's probably not good. If you have any written questions, you can bring them up. So there's going to be an overreaction. We need a shvil asov, but you should be telling. I think you should be telling your children that they should not have serious. They certainly shouldn't take rides from someone else. They shouldn't take gifts from people. There's no reason unless you tell them if you're in Shia, if a Rebbe in Yichayde gives a gift, because in that Yemenau gives you gifts for people you don't know who are not Rabbeim of yours, and not you should not be taking gifts from them. Right, that's good. That's good. Right, people taking a red flag is when adults take children off to the side by themselves. There's no legitimate reason that should ever happen. So that's a thank you. That's also something that that's a red flag. Anybody else? I'm going to wrap things up.
It somehow just seems that the thing that was very unusual about the story is that the child took a ride from a stranger. The children are standing at bus stops, waiting at city bus, and some of our older children. And often my son tells me that someone goes by, and I ask one of them that I only do it for the older people.
In Muncie, in my hometown of Muncie, kids are still hitching from the ages of 9, 10 years old. I think the parents are crazy. I'm telling people, I'm just going to write an article now begging parents not to pick up hitchhikers because they should not.
In Borough Park, to not be able to ask for directions.
I want you to know, I'm not saying I wrote. If you read this week's article, I was monogamous to it very much. I'm not 100% sure it happened like that. I don't know. I have no basis. I have no basis for saying this other than my experience.
But taking the ride was where the sugar.
Okay, but the important thing about this is that even if it is true, I just wrote it down. Even if it is true that he didn't know him, and I'm not convinced. Even if it is true, that is an oisnam. That happens in molestation cases. That's maybe 2 out of 100, 3 out of 100.
My son, I taught him that if you're lost, you ask for directions. You don't take rides.
Right, okay.
How likely is it in a Borough Park you're going to?
There's a big hakira about what you should say. I mean, a lot of people are saying go to a mommy.
Yeah.
Okay, even with these guidelines, how do you train a shy child to be assertive with adults? That's an excellent question. One of the predictors, one of the issues of, as I mentioned earlier, children who are shy and children who are extremely deferential, meaning they're very extremely idle, are at more risk than kids who are more. Now it's balance. But by the way, kids are born like this. Some children are just very timid. So you try to build up their self-confidence so that they have the capacity to say no. But understand that it is a challenge. And again, it's a balance because we really do want our children to be idle. We don't want our children, telling adults to.
What do you train children? Is it training kinder?
Okay, excellent question. What do you do you tell your child if somebody's already starting up at them? They should scream at the top of their lungs. That's what you train them to do. Scream at the top of your lungs and go to either Tati Umami or go to Umami there, nearby. Go to Umami, to a police officer if they're in public, if they're lost in a mall or something, or it's usually Dayan Zahayasham. That's how. So you don't take a kid's best medrash if they're not going to with you. I'm telling you, listen to me. To do this right, you have to change your life. I'm telling you, you can leave your children best medrash and you let them run around. It's going to. Look. It is what it is. I wish it were differently. I wish to do this right really requires a lifestyle change. I know what I'm saying, and especially in environments like this. Parents have to have their eyes open. And, you know, I would make a recommendation here. You do whatever you want. I'm not telling you, I'm an outsider. I'm going with my daughter now. But I think if this was my bungalow colony, I was the roof here, I was the manal, or whatever I was here, if I had any, I would tell you to redo the fence, you should redo the fence or make some demarcation that children shouldn't go in areas that are dark in the corners. They should play in an open area in front of everybody. That's what I would do. If you ask me what I think you should do, as parents, you should teach your children not to go off on the... listen, a lot of times, I would say an enormous amount of the abuse that happens is by older children to younger children, family members, but a lot of it happens, I told you, children who were abused. So if you have, the likelihood is, you just do the numbers, the likelihood is that there are children in any place where there's a number of children who have nebuch issues with this, and the only way to really do it is to keep your eyes open. Say, there's nothing else. I wish it were different. It's you know, whatever. Yes.
So, according to you, the lollipop man, Smethers is a dangerous person, maybe?
Don't say dangerous. I wouldn't say dangerous. What? I wouldn't say dangerous.
Let me,
and it's okay.
Let me enhance the question.
Right.
And is that lollipop man not supposed to say, Jingele, wie viel lehrst du welke Geide? Hoe lehrst du mit der Geide?
Listen to me. Somebody called me up now. Said, Yankee, you're out of control to me. You're making everybody crazy. His son went to camp. And his son is a counselor in camp, and a boy came the first day. He says, "Shalom Aleichem." He said, "I don't touch strangers." Okay, so I don't want that to happen. That's not what we're looking for.
So I'm asking for there's a lollipop there.
There's a balance. So I'm telling you, you can. It's in public. Obviously, it's in public, and he's designated to do that. You say he's the exception. He's not a stranger. He's somebody in shul who gives out treats.
Usually, the lollipop man is not a designated person.
No, okay. Listen. Listen. It is what it is. It is what it is. Well, let me put it to you differently. If this was a cancer scare, Khalila, if instead of the word molester, I told you that somebody has Rahman Islam cholera or a disease that's communicable, everybody would figure out how to keep their kids safe. If you knew that there were children here, if you took your kids to Tubas Medrash and you knew that somebody had a communicable disease like tuberculosis or everybody would figure out what to do. Everybody would change their lifestyles and do what they had to see to it that their children are not alone, because somebody's going to come and cough on you. That's what it is. I wish it were different. I wish it were different. So, Rabbi Say, is also mazel and brucha and siyata d'shmaya.
You want to ask another one question?
Anybody? Okay. I have some tapes here if anybody's interested. I have Yiddish and English. If you're interested, help yourself. I'm leaving in a few minutes, so if you want any, please just come up now. The Irish is a lot of gay, mazel and brucha and nachas, and I can. Thank you.